Hey YouTube, today we're going to be looking at two classic rifles, and this is two rifles that everybody that's in the firearms has probably heard of. And we're going to compare some of the differences and some of the similarities in these two rifles. And the one here on top that we have is a Marlin 336 chambered in 30-30, and the one on the bottom here is a Winchester Model 94 chambered in 30-30. And before we go any further, I'm going to show you that neither one of these 30-30 rifles have anything in them, and we are clear to make a video. Everybody is safe. So what we have here is two rifles that have been around a very long time. And the Winchester on the bottom here has been around since 1894. It was introduced in the 30-30 cartridge in 1895, and it was called the 30 WCF. And what that stands for, folks, is 30 Winchester Center Fire. And that was a new cartridge that came out, and it was the first repeating rifle that was chambered in a cartridge that used smokeless powder. And it was just a new caliber that came out, and it was actually pretty innovative. And it's probably the 30 caliber has probably taken more large game in the United States than probably any other cartridge. And what they did is they introduced it in this Winchester Model 94, and it's called the Model 94 because it came out in 1894. Now these these Winchester rifles have gone through a couple changes over time, and one of the most significant ones that people look for is in 1964 Winchester was experiencing some financial problems, and they figured out how to lower the cost on manufacturing these things. So what they did is they changed the metal that the receiver was made out of, and the bluing really didn't hold on as well, and they put like a little bit cheaper wood on the stocks and the internals. One of the ways you can tell the difference, one of the wing nut collectors always look for, is a set screw in the bottom of this action. And a couple of the parts on the inside were a little bit cheapened, a little cast made, and they changed some of the roll pins and stuff like that. And they got a lot of slack from the public that were buying these rifles. Well, it really hurt business a whole lot. And around, if you bought a rifle around 1965 till maybe the mid 70s, they were a lot less quality from what people say. Now keep in mind, folks, I don't buy any of this stuff. I'm just telling you what people look for, and I've mentioned this many times. I think collectors are wing nuts. They absolutely have no idea what they're talking about. Most of them probably never fired a firearm, or if they have, it's very little, and they look for the stupidest stuff to comment on. But I'm going to show you what some of this stuff is. So anyway, around the mid 70s, Winchester started taking note that they were losing sales and stuff, and they decided to go back to some of the other ways that they used to do stuff. So what they did is, this particular rifle was made in the late 70s. I think it's either 1978 or 1979. And if you notice, it has nicer wood on it still. The bluing looks phenomenal on it. It has just a regular, it's just a really good looking rifle. And then one of the things you look for is on the inside. If you look at this little feed ramp thing, on the ones that were made almost immediately preceding 1964, that was a cast piece, and they went back to machine parts on the inside. So they started using some of the good stuff, tried to save face, and used the better finish and the better wood, and they started producing really good rifles again. Now, I don't think the ones that were made right after 1964 were bad rifles. It's just a little less quality and a little less paid attention to detail when they started producing them. But they revived it and everything in the late 70s, and hence this is the product they came up with. Now, the other rifle we're going to look at is another company that rivaled Winchester, and this is a Marlin. So Marlin 336. It's also chambered in 3030. Now 3030 was actually got its name because of Winchester. If you look right up here real close, it says 3030 Winchester. And what happened was, in 1948, Marlin decided they wanted to get into the lever action 3030 game. And Winchester had a patent on the 30 Winchester centerfire cartridge. And they would have to write Winchester centerfire cartridge on their rifle, and Marlin didn't want to do that because they wanted to be a direct competitor to them, and they want to put another name on there, and I can't say that I blame them. So what they did is they started calling it the 3030. And what 3030 means, folks, is it's a 30 caliber bullet. It took 30 grains of smokeless powder to charge the projectile out of the weapon. They loaded each round with 30 grains of smokeless powder. So the name 3030 caught on, and that's what everybody started putting on there, 3030. And they write Winchester now. I believe back then they just wrote 3030. Don't quote me on that. If you look at the Winchester rifle, if you look at it up close, this one's a 70s one. It also says 3030, but the really first ones that came out would say 30 WCF for 30 Winchester centerfire. Now, both of these companies have gotten into trouble, like financial troubles, as seems most really good firearms companies has. Winchester, I think, stopped making this rifle altogether around 2006. I know they sold out a couple times, and they sold their plant altogether to actual the workers that worked in there, and they got some kind of license to start producing firearms, and they called it Winchester Repeating Firearms. And I think now they do produce the Winchester 94, and I think it's produced overseas, and I don't really know who makes it, and don't really go into that, but Winchester themselves no longer makes the Winchester 94, since I believe 2006 was the last ones produced by Winchester. The Marlin 336, they've also gotten into financial troubles, and they were acquired by Remington at one time. I don't know what year that was, and the last accounts I knew, Ruger actually acquired them, and I think they are now producing the the Marlin 336, and it's being produced by Ruger. Do not know what the quality is, but I'm sure it's fine because Ruger makes good stuff. Now, what the Marlin people look for is right up on the barrel on the receiver, they look for a little JM stamp, and this one's got it on there. It's hard to see it, but it does have it on there, and that stands for, I think, John Marlin, and it just means it was produced before a certain year with certain standards, and the collectors will not buy anything that was made without a JM stamp on it, and they're pretty much idiots. I've never seen a bad Marlin rifle ever in my life. The Winchester 94, they look for the set screw. They want a pre-1964 rifle, and they won't buy anything afterwards. Once again, those people are idiots, because I've never seen a bad Winchester lever action rifle. They're all great rifles. Both these rifles are great, folks, and both of these happen to be made in the very late 70s, almost the same year. I think one of them was made in 1978, and the other one was made in 1979. So these are real good comparison rifles to do to. These are real Marlin rifles and a real Winchester rifle, actually made by the manufacturers, not after any changes went through, not after the company changed hands or anything like this. Both of these are exactly how they should be. Now, I'm going to show you some of the differences on this. I'm going to pick up this this Winchester 94, chambered in 3030. And one of the differences, you'll notice right away that it looks a little bit smaller because it is a little bit lighter. The receiver here is quite a bit smaller than the Marlin, and it makes it a little bit lighter. So when you open this action to this Winchester, the whole action looks like it falls out of the bottom of it. And the reason being is it allows a larger cartridge to chamber into a smaller receiver, thus making the actual rifle a little bit smaller. It's actually a very innovative design. It was made up by John Moses Browning in 1894, and if you know anything about him, you'll know he is the guy that made the Browning High Power, and he's made a lot of stuff, but he made the very popular that I love very much, the 1911. So he's the one that designed this rifle. So the whole action drops out of the bottom of it. So it's a little bit more clunky. It's got a little safety right here. So you have to, when you're firing it, you have to have the lever up in order for the thing to discharge. And another difference is it doesn't have the little pistol grip style stock on it. So it makes it a little bit more slimline. It is a little bit lighter. One of the biggest differences you'll notice in a Winchester 30 and the 94 is it top ejects. So the shells eject right out the top, and that makes it almost impossible to put a stock on it. Now, I mean a scope on it. Now, people do mount scopes, and they mount them on the side, and they're not really effective because it has to be offset over to the side, and it throws the parallax off and throws the accuracy off. But these weapons were designed in the late 1800s, and there was no scopes available at that time, so people just deer hunted with them with iron sights, and they did very well in it. So they didn't see the need to do that. Now, in the later years, the Winchester Model 94 went through a couple changes, and they ended up with a tang safety on them at one time, and they ended up angle ejecting. So they ejected at an angle where you can mount a scope on them. This is not one of those. It's a little bit earlier than that, but they did make that change later on in production. Now, with the Marlin's going to be a little bit heavier, because the receiver is quite a bit beefier, and the reason being is when you cycle this action, everything stays inside. Now, with that being said, the action on it seems to be a little bit smoother because nothing falls out the bottom of it. And another thing you'll notice right away is the top of this receiver is solid, so the shells eject out the side. So if you'll notice on the top of this one, it is drilled and tapped, so you can put a scope on it if you wanted to. So that's the biggest difference in the Marlin. It is a little bit heavier, a little bit beefier made, and it does have this pistol grip right here that goes on the stock. But so the Marlin's going to be a side ejecting. You have the pistol grip. It's going to be a little bit heavier and easier to mount a scope on. The Winchester is an older design. It's going to be top ejecting. It's going to be a little bit lighter, a little bit slimliner, no pistol grip, and the whole action drops out the bottom, making the receiver a little bit smaller. But folks, if you're going to ask me which one that I think is better, I don't think there is one that's better. I think they both are very good at their craft. They both had very great innovative designs. This one's been out since 1948, and this one's been out since 1894 in their designs, and they've both been around a very long time. Marlin just decided there was a different way to skin a cat, and that's the design they came up with, and it's been very successful up till this point. But I like them both. I think they're both great rifles. I don't go down the whole collector wingnut path, and that's why I didn't know if I wanted to go down this rabbit hole with my lever guns and show them. But I like showing people all different kinds of firearms and explaining stuff to you. But I'm not an expert on either one of these two guns. I know they're very similar, and they're also very different. So if that makes any sense to you, I hope it does. If you have any questions on either one of these guns, I have separate videos on each one of them, and I'll be happy to answer any question that anybody may have. Anyway, folks, thank you very much for watching my video today, and you folks have a great day.